Okay, happy Tuesday. So today's September 29th, 2020. And then here's the big news. That's why it's in pink, right? Tomorrow is our catch-up day. Dun, da, 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 da. We want to give people a chance to get caught up. So tomorrow, all you got to do is come in, watch the video, and there's literally just a little video of a poem that I really like, a slam poetry performance. Watch the video, do the discussion. You have credit for today. So if you're behind in other classes, you can use the time tomorrow to catch up. And of course, more importantly, if you're behind in my class, you can also use the time to catch up. So tomorrow, no class. We'll meet again on Thursday. So keep that in mind. Today, we will focus on how the historical, social, economic context of the setting of a literary work directly influences its plot, characterization, and theme. So we're going to talk about the time period that Frankenstein was written. And I will make connections to personal experiences, ideas, and other media and society while responding to narrative texts. And then for our close, well, Frankenstein's monster. Is he really a monster? Explain and give evidence from the text. So that's what we're doing today. And we're doing some good reading. So I want to be sure that we all know and are reminded how great reading is. The ability to read. It's like a time machine. And the more you practice it, the better you get. And I know some of y'all have told me, man, I'm getting better at reading already. So come on, let's do our positive affirmations. Today is a good day. Unmute yourself. Let me hear you. What are you? I am smart, confident, and successful. That's because you're awesome. That's why. And how do you feel about reading? I love reading. So much fun. And here's a big one. How do you feel about testing? I love doing my best and being successful.
Oh,
Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So talking about Frankenstein, and if you go into Schoology, Tuesday's work, you can click on excerpt from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You should be able to click and open up your document, and it'll look just like this. And talking about Frankenstein, you got to understand the time period. If you notice right here, 1816 is when this all started. So what's it now, 2020? So that was 204 years ago. And we've got to understand those times were very different. In those times, people were starting to leave the farms and go into the city and work in factories and get jobs. That was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution kind of a thing. And people were treated not so well in those days, especially in Europe and Britain where this was at. You were kind of like, you were poor, you were treated as a commodity, you could work, and if you got sick or you died, oh well, that's life. And that's how people were treated. And that's kind of one of the things that Mary Shelley is talking about here. We're also going to find out about her life and some of the things that she went through. Well, and in my mind, like I said, old writing is just harder to read because people read so much more. And yeah, your average person that read had a much bigger vocabulary because they didn't have a lot of entertainment or distractions. Nobody had TV. Nobody had an Xbox or a PlayStation. Nobody had a smartphone. You were bored. What did you do? You read. And people would read for hours. Y'all think about the way you binge watch a season on Netflix. People would read the same way. They would stay up all night reading a book because that literally was their entertainment. So the mindset was very different. Well, the thing about today is, of course, we expect instant gratification. We want excitement. We want the movie to grab us, and they have all kinds of tricks to do that with, right? With special effects and sound and 3D images. So people today just don't have the patience. So we have to do it on purpose. If you're one of those impatient people, good, suffer. You have to slow yourself down so you can match the speed of the story, because it's not like a story about that happened today. And learn how to take your time and think about it. Hey, that's how times were 200 years ago. Well, 200 years ago, authors took their time. Sometimes it would be 100 pages before any conflict really happens. But after you've read 100 pages, you actually know the characters. So you care about them. You feel bad for them when they're struggling and feel bad for them when they get hurt. in a way that you don't from movies that come out today. So that makes a big difference. Read along with me. Excerpt from Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Despite what Hollywood wants you to think, there was no flash of lightning, no bolt through the head, no scientists crying, "It's alive!" and no flat top haircut. Oh, and the monster wasn't named Frankenstein. But if you ask us, the real story of Frankenstein is way cooler. During the summer of 1816, 18-year-old Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin was hanging out in a Swiss lake house with her lover and future husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Lord Byron, both famous English poets, and Byron's doctor, John Polidori, and some others, but those are the important names. It was a bummer of a vacation since the 1815 eruption of Indonesian volcano Mount Tambora disrupted weather patterns so severely that 1816 became known as the year without summer. So you're bored out of your skull in a lakeside villa with two of the most famous writers in all of English literature. What do? You have a ghost story contest. Lord Byron challenged everyone to write the scariest, freakiest, spookiest story they could come up with. Polidori came up with The Vampire, one of the first sexy vampire stories in the English language. Byron wrote a few fragments, and Mary Godwin had a vision, she claims, that she turned into one of the most famous horror stories in English literature, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. She may have been only 18, but she was seriously engaging with major intellectual questions of the time, like, should there be limits to scientific inquiry? What's the relationship between human rationality and human emotions? What's the role of the individual in relation to society or the family? The result was Frankenstein, a horror story about what happens when one man's desire for scientific discovery and immortality goes horribly wrong. And what happens to society's outcasts? With Percy's support and the help of his extensive vocabulary, whether she asked for it or not, she expanded her short story into a novel and published it in 1818. The critics didn't exactly go wild, but it was popular enough to be republished as a one-volume edition in 1831. Only Shelley wasn't the same bright-eyed 21-year-old she'd been in 1818. Listen to this. By 1831, her husband and two of her children had died. And the revised edition has a grimmer tone. In the 1831 text, nature is a destructive machine. Victor is a victim of fate, not free will. And families are not so much happy and supportive as claustrophobic and oppressive. She made so many changes, in fact, that there's a real question about which version we should be reading. We chose the 1831 version because that's the one that's most well known. And if you didn't know, which most of you probably don't, the Godwins, Mary's parents, were very forward-thinking people. They were kind of almost like political, trying to change things, make things better. So she grew up in a family that was always talking about how people are oppressed and people are treated badly. And that's a big part of why she wrote the way she wrote, because she was raised in that kind of culture. In those times, religion was huge, and people didn't question things the way they do now. So for her family and her life, she was not your average girl just having a relationship with this poet. She's been raised with a lot of thought, and that's part of why she writes the way she does. So let's look at the summary, Frankenstein's summary. Robert Walton is the captain of a ship bound for the North Pole and writes letters to his sister, Margaret Seville, telling her how lonely he is because nobody is his intellectual equal, and he feels like an outsider. In another letter, he tells how happy he is now because his crew members recently discovered a man adrift at sea who is brilliant, and Robert feels like they are equals and could be true friends. The man, Victor Frankenstein, is very thin and sickly, and obviously has been through hell. Finally, Robert gains his confidence, and Victor offers to tell Walton his story. Frankenstein has a perfect childhood in Switzerland with a loving family that even adopted orphans in need, including the beautiful Elizabeth, who soon becomes Victor's closest friend, confidant, and love. Victor also has a caring and wonderful best friend, Henry Clerval. Just before Victor turns 17 and goes to study at the University of Ingolstadt, his mother dies of scarlet fever. At Ingolstadt, depressed, Victor dives into natural philosophy with a passion, studying the secrets of life with such zeal that he even loses touch with his family. He soon rises to the top of his field, and suddenly one night discovers the secret of life. With visions of creating a new and noble race, Victor puts his knowledge to work. But when he animates his first creature, its appearance is so horrifying, he abandons it. Victor hopes the monster has disappeared forever, but his hopes are in vain. Even though the creature he created is big and ugly, like the figure of a man made of clay that's been pulled out of shape, he's also smart and strong. He hides in the woods, hoping to find a place to belong, because in many ways he's still like a small child, hoping that someone in the world will love him despite his appearance. While in the woods, the monster finds a family living in extreme poverty. Knowing how his appearance affects people, he watches them in secret. He helps them, finding them food and firewood so they will survive. The people are happily surprised by the miracle gifts they find. The monster even hears one of them say that they must have an angel who is watching over them. Desperately lonely, and knowing that the old man of the group is blind, he decides to talk to him in the hopes that he can convince the family to accept the monster as a friend. He knows it's a big risk, and he's afraid that he'll be rejected again, just as his maker, Dr. Frankenstein, did. But he finally sees his opportunity when the rest of the family goes out, and the old blind man is home alone. And that's where we're going to pick up. A couple of more details they don't tell you in the summary. This takes place in Germany, so the majority of people there speak German, but the family is from France. And the monster actually learns to speak from watching them and stalking them. So he's been watching them. He speaks French like a Frenchman, and that's why the old man is going to be surprised here in a minute. So let's read on. If you've lost track, we're at the top of page 3. Put your phones aside. Pay attention. You're good people. And the monster is about to go talk to those people, or the old man who's blind and can't see how horrible he looks. All right, let's get started. My heart beat quick. This was the hour and moment of trial which would decide my hopes or realize my fears. The servants were gone to a neighboring fair. All was silent in and around the cottage. It was an excellent opportunity. Yet when I proceeded to execute my plan, my limbs failed me, and I sank to the ground. Again I rose, and exerting all the firmness of which I was master, removed the planks which I had placed before my hovel to conceal my retreat. The fresh air revived me, and with renewed determination I approached the door of the cottage. I knocked. "Who's there?" said the old man. "Come in." I entered. "Pardon this intrusion," I said. "I am a traveler in want of a little rest. You would greatly oblige me if you would allow me to remain a few minutes before the fire." "Enter," said De Lacy, "and I will try in what manner I can to relieve your wants. But unfortunately, my children are from home, and as I am blind, I'm afraid I shall find it difficult to procure food for you." "Do not trouble yourself, my kind host. I have food. It is warmth and rest only that I need." I sat down, and silence ensued. I knew that every minute was precious to me. Yet I remained irresolute in what manner to commence the interview, when the old man addressed me. "By your language, stranger, I suppose you are my countrymen? Are you French?" "No, but I was educated by a French family, and understand that language only. I am now going to claim the protection of some friends, whom I sincerely love, and of whose favor I have some hopes." And of course, the family he's talking about is the one he's talking to right now, right? "Are they Germans?" "No, they are French. But let us change the subject. I am an unfortunate and deserted creature. I look around, and I have no relation or friend upon earth. These amiable people to whom I go have never seen me, and know little of me. I am full of fears, for if I fail there, I am an outcast in the world, forever. Do not despair. To be friendless is indeed to be unfortunate, but the hearts of men, when unprejudiced by any obvious self-interest, are full of brotherly love and charity. Rely therefore on your hopes, and if these friends are good and amiable, do not despair. They are kind. They are the most excellent creatures in the world, but unfortunately they are prejudiced against me. I have good dispositions. My life has been hitherto unharmless, and in some degree beneficial, but a fatal prejudice clouds their eyes, and where they ought to see a feeling and kind friend, they behold only a detestable monster. That is indeed unfortunate, but if you are really blameless, cannot you undeceive them? I'm about to undertake that task, and it is on that account that I feel so many overwhelming terrors. I tenderly love these friends. I have, unknown to them, been for many months in the habits of daily kindness towards them, but they believe that I wish to injure them, and it is that prejudice which I wish to overcome. Where do these friends reside? Near this spot. The old man paused, and then continued. If you will unreservedly confide to me the particulars of your tale, I perhaps may be of use in undeceiving them. I am blind and cannot judge of your countenance, but there is something in your words which persuades me that you are sincere. I am a poor and an exile, but it will afford me true pleasure to be in any way serviceable to a human creature. Excellent man. Thank you, and I accept your generous offer. You raised me from the dust by this kindness, and I trust that, by your aid, I shall not be driven from the society and sympathy of your fellow creatures. Heaven forbid. Even if you were really criminal, for that can only drive you to desperation and not instigate you to virtue. I also am unfortunate. I and my family have been condemned, although innocent, judge, therefore, if I do not feel for your misfortunes. How can I thank you, my best and only benefactor? From your lips first have I heard the voice of kindness directed towards me. I shall be forever grateful, and your present humanity assures me of success with those friends who I am on the point of meeting. May I know the names and residence of those friends? I paused. This, I thought, was the moment of decision, which was to rob me of or bestow happiness on me forever. I struggled vainly for firmness sufficient to answer him, but the effort destroyed all my remaining strength. I sank on the chair and sobbed aloud. At that moment, I heard the steps of my young protectors. I had not a moment to lose, but seizing the hand of the old man, I cried, "Now is the time. Save and protect me. You and your family are the friends whom I seek. Do not you desert me in the hour of trial." "Great God!" exclaimed the old man. "Who are you?" At that instant, the cottage door was opened, and Felix, Safie, and Agatha entered. Who can describe their horror and consternation on beholding me? Agatha fainted, and Safie, unable to attend to her friend, rushed out of the cottage. Felix darted forward, and with supernatural force tore me from his father, to whose knees I clung. In a transport of fury, he dashed me to the ground, and struck me violently with a stick. I could have torn him limb from limb as the lion rends the antelope, but my heart sank within me as with bitter sickness, and I refrained. I saw him on the point of repeating his blow, when, overcome by pain and anguish, I quitted the cottage, and in the general tumult, escaped unperceived to my hovel. Chapter 16. Cursed, cursed Creator! Why did I live? Why, in that instant, did I not extinguish the spark of existence which you had so wantonly bestowed? I know not. Despair had not yet taken possession of me. My feelings were those of rage and revenge. I could with pleasure have destroyed the cottage and its inhabitants, and have glutted myself with their shrieks and misery. When night came, I quitted my retreat and wandered in the woods, and now, no longer restrained by the fear of discovery, I gave vent to my anguish in fearful howlings. I was like a wild beast that had broken the toils, destroying the objects that obstructed me, and ranging through the wood with a stag-like swiftness. Oh, what a miserable night I passed! The cold stars shone in mockery. and the bare trees waved their branches above me. Now and then the sweet voice of a bird burst forth amidst the universal stillness. All, save I, were at rest or in enjoyment. And I, like the arch-fiend, bore a hell within me, and finding myself unsympathized with, wished to tear up the trees, spread havoc and destruction around me, and then to have sat down and enjoyed the ruin. All right, so we're at the third paragraph of page 5. Go ahead and continue reading on your own. It's just a page and a half. If you don't know a word, skip it. Use your imagination and find out what happens. When you're done, answer the discussion question. Is the monster really a monster?